The sun had just started to rise, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. The mall's large glass doors reflected the light, and the place was waking up slowly. The cleaning staff were finishing their work. A few shopkeepers were unlocking their stores, and the smell of coffee drifted through the air from a small cafe near the entrance. The security officer stood by the main gate, as he did every morning, scanning each corner with quiet focus. He had been doing this job for years. Most people walked past him without paying much attention, but he always greeted everyone with a gentle smile. He believed that kindness cost nothing, and every day was a new chance to make someone's day a little better. It was part of who he was. He liked order, calm, and helping people feel safe. The early hours were always peaceful, and he enjoyed that stillness before the rush began. It was around 9 in the morning when he noticed an elderly woman sitting on the bench just outside the mall. She was small and frail, wearing a faded coat that looked too light for the cold air. She clutched a small handbag tightly and kept glancing around as if searching for someone. People passed by her quickly, busy with their own plans. Some even glanced her way but didn't stop. Something about her caught the officer's attention. Maybe it was the lost look in her eyes or the way her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her scarf. At first, he decided not to approach too quickly. Sometimes people just needed a moment to gather themselves. But after a few minutes, he noticed she was still sitting there, still looking anxious. She tried to stand up once, then sat back down. That's when he knew he couldn't just ignore it. He walked toward her slowly, keeping his tone gentle. "Good morning, ma'am," he said kindly. "Are you all right? Can I help you with something?" She looked up, her eyes watery but kind. I think I got off at the wrong bus stop," she said in a shaky voice. "I was visiting the hospital near here, but now I can't seem to find my way back home." He nodded patiently. "No problem, ma'am. Don't worry. You're safe here. Let's figure it out together." She smiled faintly but looked tired. He could see she hadn't eaten breakfast. Her face showed that mix of strength and exhaustion that only older people carry. Like she'd lived through a lot, but right now she just needed a little help. He offered her his water bottle. "Would you like some water? You've been sitting here a while, haven't you?" She hesitated but took it gratefully. "Thank you, son," she whispered. He helped her move to a shaded corner near the entrance where the morning breeze wasn't too strong. He placed one of the mall's plastic chairs for her to sit more comfortably. Then he excused himself politely and stepped back inside to inform his supervisor through the radio. "I'll be a few minutes late for my post," he said. "There's an elderly woman outside who seems lost. I'm helping her out." The supervisor understood and told him to take his time. The officer walked to the cafe nearby and bought a small cup of tea and a simple sandwich with his own money. When he returned, he placed them on the bench beside her. "Please eat something, ma'am. You'll feel better," he said. The woman looked surprised. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. He just smiled. "It's all right. My mother always says, never let someone in need go hungry." She gave a small laugh. "Your mother raised you well," she said, taking a small bite. The warmth of the tea seemed to bring some color back to her cheeks. For a few minutes they sat in silence. The world around them moved fast. People hurrying past, cars honking, shop shutters opening. But in that small corner, time slowed down. The officer didn't mind sitting quietly. He could see how nervous she had been, and sometimes words weren't necessary. Just being there made a difference. As she ate, she began to open up. She told him she had gone to visit her sister at the hospital. She wasn't used to traveling alone and had taken the wrong bus after leaving. Her phone battery had died, and she didn't know how to reach her family. She had tried asking someone for help earlier, but no one had stopped long enough to listen. The officer listened carefully, nodding now and then. "It's okay," he said gently. "We'll sort this out. Once you finish your tea, we'll go inside and I'll help you call your family." She smiled again, her eyes glistening. "You're very kind," she said. "Not many people stop anymore," he shrugged. "Sometimes people are just busy. They don't mean to ignore others. But I believe if we slow down for a moment, we can always find time to care." While they talked, a few people nearby noticed them. One young man waiting for his friend across the street took out his phone. He didn't mean any harm, he just wanted to capture what he saw. It was rare, after all, to see a stranger caring so sincerely for someone they didn't know. He pressed record quietly, zooming in on the officer offering the woman tea, helping her adjust her shawl, and talking to her like she was family. The officer had no idea he was being filmed. For him, it wasn't something special. It was just the right thing to do. After she finished her tea, he led her inside the mall to the customer service desk. He asked the receptionist for help finding a phone charger in a quiet corner so the woman could rest. While her phone charged, he helped her call her son. When her son picked up, relief filled her face. She explained what had happened, and soon, arrangements were made for him to come and get her. The officer waited with her the whole time, keeping her company. He didn't leave her side until her son arrived, nearly an hour later. When the young man came rushing in, he looked worried but thankful beyond words. He shook the officer's hand firmly and said, "Thank you." I was terrified. I didn't know where she was. The officer simply smiled. She's safe now. That's what matters. Before leaving, the elderly woman took his hand gently and said, "You were my angel today. Thank you for stopping." Her voice trembled, but her gratitude was genuine. The officer just nodded, slightly embarrassed. "I'm glad I could help, ma'am." "Take care." As they walked away, he returned to his post quietly. He didn't think much of it after that. For him, it was a normal day, another morning where he'd tried to do something good. But what he didn't know was that the small act of kindness, the one he thought no one saw, had already started spreading beyond that mall's walls. The young man who recorded the moment later posted the video online. The caption read, "This security officer just made my day. We need more people like him in this world." He didn't add any names, just a few seconds of simple humanity, a tired woman being cared for, a man offering his time and heart. That night, while the officer was home having dinner, his phone buzzed with messages from his coworkers. "You're famous," one of them texted, but he didn't understand what they meant yet. To him, it had been an ordinary day, and the thought that anyone might call it extraordinary never crossed his mind. The world, however, was about to show him how much one small act of kindness could mean. The next morning began like any other. The sun was already up when the security officer put on his uniform and adjusted the badge on his chest. He always liked things neat and proper. It gave him a sense of pride, not because it made him look important, but because it reminded him of responsibility. His job was simple yet meaningful: to keep people safe, to notice what others missed, and to help when he could. When he reached the mall, the other guards greeted him with friendly smiles. One of them jokingly said, "You're trending, brother." He laughed, not really understanding what that meant. He thought maybe they were teasing him for some reason. But soon after, one of the younger guards showed him a video on his phone. The officer's eyes widened when he saw it. It was the clip of him helping the elderly woman from the day before. The video had been shared hundreds of times already. The sound of their soft conversation, the way he offered her tea, and her faint smile had touched people. The video was simple, barely a minute long, but something about it had moved hearts. He stood there quietly, unsure how to react. "I didn't know someone was recording," he said softly. His coworker patted his shoulder. "Well, they did. And now everyone knows what kind of person you are." He smiled shyly and shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same." But deep down he was surprised. It was strange to think that something so ordinary, something that felt like simple decency, had caught the attention of so many people. Throughout the morning, customers walking into the mall greeted him with warm smiles. Some even recognized him from the video. A young woman passing by said, "You're the kind guard from the video, right? That was so sweet of you." He felt his face flush with embarrassment. "Thank you," he replied quietly, not knowing what else to say. Inside, though, he felt a small sense of joy. It wasn't about being recognized. It was about the fact that kindness, something so small, was still being noticed in a world that often moved too fast to care. As the day went on, more people began talking about it. A reporter from a local news channel called the mall's management asking for an interview. They wanted to meet the security officer whose simple act had gone viral overnight. The mall supervisor called him into the office later that afternoon. When he entered, his supervisor smiled warmly. "You've become quite the hero, my friend." He chuckled awkwardly. "Hero? I don't think so, sir. I just helped someone who needed it." "That's exactly why people are calling you one," the supervisor replied. "We've received so many messages from people online saying your kindness made their day. Some even said it restored their faith in humanity." The officer didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight. He was just a man doing his job the way he thought it should be done, with care. The supervisor continued. The management is planning to recognize you officially. They want to thank you for representing the mall in such a positive way. He nodded, still feeling unsure. Thank you, sir, but honestly, I don't need any reward. The lady got home safe. That's all that matters to me, his supervisor smiled. That's what makes it even more meaningful. Sometimes real goodness doesn't expect anything in return. Later that evening, as he returned to his small apartment, he sat on his balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He thought about the elderly woman. He wondered how she was doing. He remembered her trembling hands, her gentle smile when she called him her angel. That memory stayed with him more than the fame or praise. He turned on his phone to check the video himself. There were hundreds of comments under it. Some people wrote about how they wished there were more people like him. Others shared their own stories of kindness, moments when a stranger helped them when they needed it most. A few even said they cried watching the video. He scrolled quietly, reading each message. A few of them said things like, "This video made me realize how important small kindness can be. I showed this to my kids so they can learn what it means to care. He reminded me of my father. Thank you, sir, wherever you are." He felt his eyes sting for a moment. He wasn't used to such attention, but knowing that it had inspired people made him happy. He didn't want fame. He just hoped people would remember the message, not his face. The next morning, when he arrived at work again, a small crowd had gathered near the entrance. A news crew stood with a camera. His supervisor waved him over and whispered, "They're from the local channel. They just want a few words. Nothing fancy." He hesitated, but he didn't want to seem rude. The reporter, a cheerful young woman, greeted him warmly. "Sir, we've all seen your video. Could you tell us what made you stop that morning?" He looked at the camera, a bit nervous, but his voice was calm. "I saw someone who needed help. That's all. I didn't think twice. I just did what anyone should do," she smiled. "Many people are saying your kindness gave them hope. How does that feel?" He paused for a second before answering. "It feels good to know people still care about kindness. But I think we all have that goodness inside us. Sometimes we just need to slow down and notice it." The short interview aired that same evening. It wasn't dramatic or emotional, just simple honesty. But that was what made it powerful. The story spread to other news pages, and soon, his quiet face was appearing in posts across social media. People were sharing the clip again, calling it, "The day kindness was caught on camera." Days passed, and though the attention slowly calmed down, the message remained. People around the mall treated him with new respect. Shoppers greeted him more warmly, and his co-workers admired his humility. Even his family, who lived in another city, called him to say how proud they were. His younger sister told him on the phone, "I saw you on the news. You look so serious," he laughed. "I was nervous. I didn't know what to say." "Well," she replied, "you said enough. You showed people what being human really means." That night, when he finally lay down to rest, he felt peaceful, not because of the attention, but because something good had come from something so small. It reminded him that people still cared about kindness, even in a world full of distractions. The elderly woman's family called the mall the next week. They wanted to meet him again to thank him properly. He agreed, happy to see her once more. When they met, she hugged him gently, tears in her eyes. "I've told everyone about you," she said softly. "You didn't just help me. You reminded me there are still good people in this world." He smiled, feeling humbled. "I'm just glad you got home safe," he said. Before leaving, her son handed him a small note. It said, "Thank you for treating my mother like your own." He folded the note carefully and kept it in his wallet. Every time he looked at it, he felt a quiet warmth in his heart, a reminder that even the smallest act could reach far beyond what one could imagine. The officer went back to work as usual, standing at the same gate, greeting people with the same smile. But from that day onward, he noticed something had changed, not just in him, but in those around him. People seemed a little more patient, a little more kind, as if they had all taken a small piece of that moment with them. And though he didn't seek the spotlight, his story had become something larger than himself. It was a simple truth that the world sometimes forgets. One act of kindness can echo far longer than anyone expects. The days after the interview felt like a dream for the security officer. He never imagined that a small act of kindness could draw so much attention. Everywhere he went, people seemed to recognize him. Some waved from a distance, others stopped to thank him for reminding them that compassion still existed. Though he appreciated their kind words, he didn't let it change who he was. He still arrived early to his shift, polished his shoes, adjusted his cap, and began his rounds with the same quiet dedication as always. Inside, however, something had shifted. The attention had made him realize how deeply people craved kindness. It wasn't about fame. It was about connection. He noticed how even a smile from a stranger seemed to lift someone's spirit. Maybe the world hadn't lost its goodness. It just needed gentle reminders now and then. One afternoon, while he was stationed near the mall's entrance, a young mother with 2 children approached him. She looked shy but determined. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you the security guard from the video?" He gave a modest smile. "Yes, that's me," she smiled warmly. "I just wanted to say thank you. I showed that video to my kids. I wanted them to see that there are still people who care. My little one even said he wants to be like you when he grows up." The officer's eyes softened. "That means a lot. Tell your son that being kind is something anyone can do. He doesn't need a uniform to do that." She nodded, thanking him again before walking away. The small exchange made his day. It reminded him that what happened wasn't just a viral story. It was a message spreading quietly from one heart to another. Later that day, as he sat in the small security room during his lunch break, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from a local community center. They invited him to visit their youth group to share his experience. He hesitated at first. He wasn't a public speaker. He was just a simple man doing his job. But after thinking it over, he agreed. Maybe if his story could encourage others to be kind, it was worth it. A few days later, he stood in front of a small crowd of young students at the community hall. They clapped as he walked to the front, which made him blush slightly. He wasn't used to applause. The organizer handed him a microphone, but he didn't need it. His voice was calm and sincere. "I don't really have a big story to tell," he began. "That morning, I just saw someone who needed help. I didn't plan it. I didn't know anyone was watching. But sometimes life gives you moments to do the right thing. The choice is always yours to walk away or to stop and care." The hall was silent. Every eye was on him. "I think kindness is like a ripple," he continued. "You drop one small pebble of goodness and the waves keep moving. Maybe you'll never see where they reach, but they do reach somewhere. That's what I've learned." When he finished, the crowd clapped again. A few of the kids even came up afterward to shake his hand and thank him. One of them said, "I helped an old man cross the street yesterday because of your video." The officer smiled, feeling a warmth that words couldn't describe. After the event, as he walked back to his bus stop, he thought about how strange life could be. A simple decision to stop and help had turned into something that inspired others. He wasn't sure if he deserved the attention, but he was grateful that something good had come out of it. Back at the mall, his daily routine continued. He still helped lost shoppers, carried heavy bags for elderly visitors, and greeted children with a friendly wave. People often came up to take photos with him, and though it felt awkward at times, he never refused. He wanted them to remember that kindness could come from anyone, anywhere. One rainy afternoon, something unexpected happened. The elderly woman he had helped that day returned to the mall. She walked a little slower than before, but her eyes were bright. The officer was surprised to see her. He quickly walked over with a big smile. "Ma'am, it's so good to see you again," he said warmly. She smiled back. "I told my son I wanted to come here to see you." "I heard you've become quite famous," he laughed lightly. "I don't know about famous, ma'am. I think people just like the story." She nodded. "That's because it reminded them that good people still exist. You don't know how much your kindness meant to me that day. I was so scared and lost. You didn't just help me find my way, you made me feel safe again." The officer's expression softened. "I'm glad I could help. That's all I wanted." Her son joined in, holding a small bag. "We brought something for you," he said. Inside was a box of homemade sweets and a thank you card. The card had the woman's handwriting on it, shaky but heartfelt. It said, "Thank you for being the kind heart the world still needs." He held the card carefully, smiling from ear to ear. "This means more to me than anything," he said. They chatted for a while before she left, but the encounter stayed in his mind long after. That night, he placed the card on his bedside table. Whenever he looked at it, it reminded him that kindness wasn't just about the act. It was about how it made others feel. As weeks passed, the attention around the video began to fade, as viral stories often do. But for the officer, the real story was never about the views or the fame. It was about the quiet changes he saw around him. The mall staff began treating visitors with more patience. People started greeting the guards instead of walking past them. Sometimes shoppers even left small thank you notes for the security team. One day, a teenage boy came up to him near the entrance. "Sir," the boy said shyly, "I saw your video months ago. I used to think helping others was a waste of time. But now I try to do something kind every day. It actually makes me feel good." The officer smiled gently. That's how it starts. Kindness grows when we share it. That night, as he walked home under the dim streetlights, he thought about how much the world could change if everyone did just one good thing a day. He realized that kindness didn't have to be big. It could be as simple as listening to someone, smiling at a stranger, or helping a lost person find their way. He had seen firsthand how one small act could create a wave of hope. Even though the cameras had moved on, and the news had found other stories to tell, the echo of that one moment continued quietly in the hearts of many. He never tried to recreate it, or chase another moment like that. He didn't have to. The beauty of that day was in its honesty. It wasn't planned, it wasn't for show. It was just one human helping another, and that was enough. And as he stood once more at his post the next morning, watching people come and go, he couldn't help but smile. Somewhere out there, someone might be doing a kind act because they saw his story. Maybe they'd help a stranger, share their lunch, or simply listen to someone who needed to talk. That thought filled him with quiet pride. Not the kind that comes from attention, but the kind that comes from knowing he'd done something meaningful. He didn't need to be known as the kind guard or the viral officer. To him, he was just a man doing his duty, guided by the belief that compassion still mattered in this world. And even though life had gone back to normal, his heart carried something new, a simple truth that he'd seen with his own eyes. One good moment, caught by chance, could remind millions that humanity was still alive and well. The days kept passing, and though life seemed to move at its usual pace, the quiet warmth that surrounded the security officer's story continued to ripple through the town. Every now and then someone new would recognize him, smile, and thank him for reminding the world that good still existed. But for him, things hadn't really changed much. He still wore the same uniform, greeted every visitor, and did his job with the same care as before. One Saturday morning, while standing at his post near the entrance, he noticed an elderly man struggling with a heavy box. Without hesitation, he walked over to help. The man thanked him and said softly, "You're the guard from the video, aren't you? The one who helped that old woman?" The officer smiled modestly. "Yes, that was me," the man chuckled. "You did more than help her. You reminded people like me that there's still goodness around. I showed that video to my grandchildren. It made them promise to help others too." Hearing that, the officer felt a lump form in his throat. He didn't know what to say except, "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." After helping the man carry his box to the taxi, he went back to his spot and stood silently for a while. He thought about how a single small act had traveled so far, how it had touched people he'd never even met. The world felt a little smaller, a little kinder. Later that day, a woman from the mall management approached him with a friendly smile. "There's a letter for you," she said, handing him a white envelope. It was addressed in neat handwriting. He opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note that read, "Dear Sir, you don't know me, but your story gave me hope. I was going through a very hard time, feeling invisible and forgotten. Then I saw your video. The way you helped that woman without expecting anything reminded me that life still has beautiful people. I decided to volunteer at a shelter because of you. Thank you for being a light in a world that sometimes feels dark. With respect and gratitude, a stranger who believes in kindness again." He read the letter twice, his eyes misty. Then he folded it carefully and kept it in his pocket. That note wasn't just words, it was proof that kindness could heal hearts he didn't even know were hurting. The days went by, and the small acts of compassion continued. Whenever someone dropped a bag, he helped. When a child was crying, he knelt down and spoke softly until they felt safe. He didn't do it because of the cameras, he didn't even think about them anymore. He did it because that was who he was now. but something unexpected was waiting around the corner. One afternoon, the mall's public announcement system called his name, asking him to come to the manager's office. He wondered what it could be this time. When he entered, he saw not just the manager, but also a small film crew and 2 people from a local charity organization. The manager smiled and said, "You might not know this, but your story has inspired more than just our mall visitors. These folks are from a community project that helps train young people to serve others. They'd like you to speak at their next event." The officer looked shocked. "Me? I'm not used to speaking in front of people. I'm just a security guard." The charity representative replied gently, "That's exactly why we want you. The world has enough speeches. It needs more real stories. Yours shows that ordinary people can make an extraordinary difference." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "If sharing my story can help, I'll do it." A week later, he found himself standing in front of a small crowd in a community hall. There were students, volunteers, and families sitting on simple plastic chairs, waiting to hear him speak. He felt nervous, his palms slightly sweaty, but when he looked around and saw their hopeful faces, something inside him calmed. He began softly. "I don't have fancy words or big lessons to share. I just want to tell you this: kindness doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need an audience. That day when I helped the old woman, I didn't know anyone was watching. I just saw someone in need. If I had walked away, maybe she would have been fine. But maybe she wouldn't. The truth is, we never know how much a small gesture can mean to someone." The audience listened quietly, their eyes fixed on him. He went on, "Life gives us moments to choose, to walk past or to stop and care. It doesn't take money or status to make a difference. It just takes heart." When he finished speaking, the hall filled with applause. People came up to him afterward to thank him, shake his hand, and even share their own stories of kindness. Some said they were inspired to volunteer, while others promised to treat the people around them with more respect. That night, as he walked home under the stars, he felt lighter than ever. Not because of the applause, but because he had seen kindness spread with his own eyes. A few months later, the mall held a community event to honor the staff who had made a difference. The officer was one of them. They showed a short video montage of his moments: the old woman, the little girl, the delivery rider, and the people he had helped quietly every day. When his turn came to speak, he didn't read from a script. He looked at the audience and said, "I'm grateful, but I don't think of myself as special. We all have the power to care. You don't need a title or uniform to make the world better. You just need to start with one act of kindness." After the event ended, a young boy came up to him and said, "Sir, I want to be kind like you when I grow up." The officer knelt down and smiled. "You already are if you care for others." As the years went by, his story continued to be shared. New people came to the mall without knowing who he was, but those who did often stopped to greet him with warmth and respect. The elderly woman he had helped that first day sometimes visited him too. She would bring homemade snacks and talk about her grandchildren, always saying the same thing: "You may have saved my day, but you also touched my heart." He would always reply humbly, "You gave me a chance to do something good. I should thank you." Eventually, his video faded from the internet spotlight. New stories came, new faces appeared, but that didn't bother him. The true impact of his kindness wasn't in the views or comments. It was in the quiet way people had changed. The mall became a friendlier place. The staff treated visitors with more patience. Even strangers helped each other more often. One evening, years later, as he was finishing his shift, he stood by the entrance and watched the sunset reflect on the glass doors. A young man walked up to him and said, "You probably don't remember me, but years ago I saw your story when I was in school. I work here now, and I wanted to say thank you. You taught me what kind of person I want to be." The officer smiled warmly. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." As the mall lights turned on and the day came to an end, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had never sought fame or reward, but somehow, his simple act had left a quiet mark on hundreds of lives, and maybe that's how kindness works. Not loud or grand, but steady and gentle, like a light that never fades. Even when no one's watching, it keeps shining, and somewhere someone's heart feels a little warmer because of it.